Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Health Chats Among Friends. My name is Deidre Kindred. I'm a patient advocate, navigator, and educator. And tonight on Health Chats Among Friends, I have a good friend here who is always, when I reach out to her, she educates me, she calms me down. Because I get a little passionate, and she is just a wealth of knowledge. So Yuri Martinez is with the Ombudsman's office. So I'm going to be quiet and have her introduce herself. Yuri.
Deidre, thank you so much for having me on. I enjoy speaking with you just as much as you mentioned. I enjoy what I do, and I'm always happy to help when I can. So,
Oh my goodness, you are just such a wonderful person. I must say that, because every time I've called, which has been a few times, you have always, just led me in the right direction and just opened my eyes to a lot of things in advocacy for people that are in these nursing homes and assisted living. So, Yuri, tell me a little bit about why you started at the Ombudsman's office, and then we'll get into what is the Ombudsman's office and what it does.
absolutely. So, why I started working, or what kind of pushed me to be a part of the Ombudsman program, is my passion to serve others in the community in general. I am a graduate of the School of Social Work, University of Texas, Arlington, undergrad as well as my graduate studies there. And when I started learning about the needs of the elderly, and not only the elderly, but of course, it's a mixed population in the nursing homes and assisted living. And when I started to learn about the needs of the people in those settings, I realized that ombudsmen are a very much needed service there. And I was recruited as a volunteer in the beginning. So I spent about a year, a little bit over a year as a volunteer. And then I began to work after a year and probably a month or two as a part-time ombudsman in the assisted living. And I've been there ever since.
Wonderful. Always a great story. So, what does the Ombudsman's office do? As far as, I've seen the signs, and maybe some people don't really pay attention to them, but they are posted in your assisted livings, in your nursing homes, in your rehab centers, hospitals as well. Is that correct, or am I not correct with that?
So the long-term care ombudsman, the long-term care ombudsman, we only have jurisdiction in the assisted living and the nursing homes.
Okay.
However, at times, if a resident transfers to and from the hospital, but they're still a resident of a nursing facility or an assisted living facility, we still serve that person as a resident until they completely leave that system. So it's mainly assisted living and nursing homes. And the main mission or purpose of the ombudsman is to promote and to advocate for the safety and welfare and health and rights of the residents living in those settings. So anything that has to do with their care, their rights, their dignity, respect, their safety, and their well-being has to do with the ombudsman, and that's what we help people with.
And so you guys kind of split it up in jurisdictions, so to speak, because Fort Worth, Dallas is so huge. So you kind of split it up in different, would it be zip codes, or how does that work?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to explain. So statewide, of course, the long-term care ombudsman is nationwide. Every state has an ombudsman program. So if anyone ever has a need to reach out to their ombudsman program, the best way is to start with the state ombudsman. Whether it's in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California, every state is going to have an ombudsman program. And then the statewide structure. Here in Texas, we have the state ombudsman, whose name is Patty Ducaye, and her staff. They are located in Austin, and she and her staff oversee the 28 programs throughout the state. So there are 28 programs. Obviously, there are many more counties than just 28, right? So as you can imagine, some programs cover multiple counties. With a program the size of ours in Tarrant County, because like you said, our area is very vast. We only cover Tarrant County because we just have so many facilities. Dallas covers only Dallas County, but we have a third program in the Metroplex. It's the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and the North Central Texas Ombudsman program is a part of that. And they cover multiple counties around Dallas and Tarrant. So we're talking about Johnson, Parker, Collin, and so on and so forth. There's about 14 counties that they cover in the area.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, huge. So yeah, so that's really great. So you mentioned a little bit about the role of the ombudsman. So let's go talk about that just a little bit more for someone who may not really understand, what it is that the ombudsman does. So let's talk about the role.
Yes. So the role of the ombudsman is we wear different hats. Like I mentioned earlier, the main purpose is to advocate for the safety and welfare of those residents. And what that translates into on a day-to-day is visiting with the residents on a regular basis, making unannounced visits to the facilities that they live in. The frequency of the visits depends on the type and size of the facility. So I won't go into detail because every facility is going to be a little different just depending on the type and the size of the facility. And the state puts forth certain visitation frequency requirements. However, each local entity can do more than that. And so that can vary by program as well. But we do meet the minimum standards always, and we try to go above and beyond, of course, because we realize that the residents need us. And going back to the role, on a day-to-day basis, our role consists of advocating for different things, such as perhaps some of the concerns or challenges that may be brought up to our attention, either by the residents or by families or sometimes staff or providers, are things like perhaps billing issues or care issues. Maybe the medication isn't being administered the way that it should be, the way that it was ordered, or there can just be different issues or challenges that come along with that. So food service concerns in the activities department, perhaps environmental things such as cleanliness, pests, housekeeping, laundry issues, pretty much any service that is provided to that person in that setting.
Yes. So somebody wanted, because it's almost like you guys are the police, for these facilities and things like that. Do you ever get any praises or praise reports from people about assisted livings and things like that?
So praises about what we do?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. We get emails thanking us and, letting us know how wonderful we did with their situation. Oftentimes it's following up and following through and the listening that people are most appreciative of. Many of our residents say, well, I had already brought this up to a couple of people. And, when I brought it up with you, I thought, well, Yuri's just going to forget about it. Or, I won't hear for another year. And hopefully I'll still be here. And when we come back as ombudsman and follow up throughout the process and keep them involved as a person and as a resident of that community, they're very appreciative of that.
Right. Because many people, sometimes in that generation, they don't really want to say anything, even though they may not feel like they're being treated fairly. So sometimes they just, I don't want to say anything because they're scared of retaliation.
That's a very, very viable concern.
So what would you say to someone who had that concern?
Don't be afraid to speak up with your ombudsman. Your ombudsman has to abide by rules, confidentiality rules, and we do that. Anything that a resident discusses with their ombudsman is between the resident and the ombudsman, unless we have proper permission to move forth with their concern. And I say that, very honestly and very openly. We are not allowed to address any concerns unless we have proper consent. So they can always be reassured as residents that we will follow that protocol. And we will follow up with them. Sometimes residents tell us, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to make enemies, or it's just a minor concern, and I really don't want the management to think that it's a big problem. And what I say to them is, we don't want to let it fester. We don't want to let it snowball into a bigger problem. Why don't we go ahead and handle it now? And oftentimes just providing information really helps the resident. Sometimes it's not intervening on behalf of the resident, it's helping them to figure out, what is the grievance process in this facility? Sometimes residents don't know a small little form that you can grab at the front desk that says grievance, and you can put your name or leave it blank and put your situation or your concern down, and that will go to the proper management person. Sometimes it's just about giving information. And that's another thing we do, is we provide education, not only to residents, but also to families and staff and other people that are involved with their care.
Yes, absolutely. Because no question is a dumb question. Because sometimes as a resident, you may feel like, oh, that's really nothing. I think that's a silly question. But it could be something your fellow resident will have the same concern or the same question, and nobody ever said anything about it. So they just go on and carry on life without knowing about what they can address right now. Maybe something small. You never know.
Yes. And that's a very good point. Sometimes we don't realize that what could be a problem for me as a resident in a nursing facility or an assisted living facility, the same neighbors having. And so I might be helping someone else.
Yeah, you never know. So with COVID, I know that it probably affected your the ombudsman's employment and staff and things like that. So do you have any volunteer programs? And if you do, what are the qualifications for someone to volunteer?
Absolutely. So we just kind of struggled through the whole beginning of COVID, and we just did whatever we could. We continued our volunteer program. So we continue to certify people throughout the whole COVID situation, and we are continuing to do that now. Every quarter we hold a certification training, and the qualifications are, first and most importantly, a genuine passion and a genuine interest in helping the elderly and others in the facilities. That's the first and most important qualification. And from there, the person would need to be 18 years or older, have a way to get to the facility. So transportation, because we do ask the volunteers to make visits on a regular basis. They are assigned to at least one facility, but we can always assign more as needed. Another qualification is to pass a background check and not have any conflicts of interest. So if a person works in a facility, that would be a conflict that we can't remedy. Some conflicts of interest are able to, be remedied, but something like that wouldn't.
Yeah. So what would a volunteer do? Do you give them some type of forms to kind of go and visit the facility, or what would they do?
Yes, the volunteer visits the facility on a regular basis, and they turn in a monthly report. as to what activities they did for that month, and whatever activities they completed that month. And of course, we have that certification training in which we discuss how to fill out the report, what activities are reportable. We talk about, it's 16 chapters. The certification training manual is 16 chapters. So we pretty much cover from the introduction about the Ombudsman program and what it is that you're getting into, all the way to our Ombudsman policies and procedures and everything in between that they need to know in order to do their job as a volunteer.
Oh, wow. That is so interesting. I never thought about volunteers for the Ombudsman. That's cool.
Yes.
So it could be like, maybe say it's a student who's thinking about going into healthcare and they really, not sure, and then kind of get their feet wet a little bit on that aspect. That's what I would think. Or someone who's retired and you maybe have a look. Oh, okay. So my question is that hypothetically, could a volunteer have a family member at, is that a conflict of interest? That's my question that's getting to.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a conflict of interest if the family member is in the same facility that the volunteer is assigned to, but we can remedy that by not assigning the volunteer to that facility or any facility that is associated with the same company, the ownership of that facility, to avoid any future conflicts of interest, if that makes sense.
Good. So the volunteers, would they volunteer for a certain number of hours after they pass their certification, pass the background check, and then they would get maybe facility X in North Richland Hills?
Yes. So we assign based on location to make it convenient for the volunteer. So if there's a nursing home down the street from your house, that's potentially where you might be assigned to. Unless there's a volunteer already assigned to that, then, we try to look for the closest facility in your area so that it's convenient for the volunteer. And of course, based on need too. Sometimes we have asked volunteers if they would be willing to drive just a little bit further, maybe past something that's really close to home, but that has a higher need at the time. And we've had volunteers to agree to do that. So it is the assignment is based on location, as far as that's concerned.
Okay. And the receptivity. So how does a volunteer do they just show up at a facility and they say who they are? Because everybody has to sign in.
Yeah.
These days. So do they just show up and say, "Hi, my name is Deidre Kindred and I am a volunteer with the Ombudsman office. I'm here to check you out."
That's a great question. So during certification training, part of the training includes going to their assigned nursing home and training there as well. We provide the volunteer with on-site training, not only the certification manual training, but on-site training. And during that, they are introduced to their facility. So the staff knows before we actually throw them out there on their own, so to speak, turn them loose. The staff knows you have a volunteer ombudsman, and therefore when the volunteer ombudsman is graduated and is certified and they start to visit on their own, the staff is familiar with who they are, and the volunteer signs in, and then they just get started. What we do is we go door to door and try to touch bases with as many residents as we can throughout our visit. Now, earlier you mentioned the frequency, and I don't want to forget to tell you about that. For a volunteer, currently we are asking for a monthly visit for at least 2 hours. That's the minimum. They can always visit more if they want and feel comfortable, because like you said, COVID did change many things for us, and some volunteers took a leave of absence and things like that, and understandably so, for different reasons, right? And prior to COVID, we were asking the volunteers to visit on a weekly basis for 2 hours a week. Eventually, we will come back to that, but for now, it's just a monthly visit for 2 hours every month. The other time commitment is the ongoing education that we provide to the volunteers. The state ombudsman requires that every ombudsman, staff and volunteers included, complete a total of 18 hours of continuing education every year, which we provide. Volunteers don't have to go searching for their
Oh,
own
that's nice.
webinars. We
Mhm.
provide that every month. And so that would be the other time commitment for volunteers, is to commit to being online for an hour and a half or 2 hours every month to get their continuing education hours.
Okay, okay. Well,
Yes.
that's awesome. So how do you even get the word out about volunteers besides podcasts like this or things like this? Is my first time even learning about volunteerism for the ombudsman.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that we get the word out or spread the word about volunteer recruitment is social media. We put our volunteer, opportunities on social media. We have put ads in the paper in the past. Those aren't as popular anymore. Most people get on social media, and so that's where they see it. Sometimes people encounter friends, so word of mouth, and they go online, do a search. They just Google, I want to help people in the community, and the Ombudsman volunteer opportunity pops up there. Sometimes people visit the United Way website, which United Way is our host agency. And so it's United Way Area Agency on Aging webpage in Tarrant County, and they can find information there. I also do presentations for groups, live or online, different organizations in the community that I reach out to, or by word of mouth, somebody tells me about them and I reach out and we coordinate a presentation. So just a variety of ways to tell people.
Good, good, good. So if someone wanted to find out more about the ombudsman, their role, we know the purpose is to protect the residents that are in these facilities for their rights, for their, concerns or anything like that. But if they wanted to find out more about the volunteer program, especially, what is the best ways that they can reach out to you and find more?
Absolutely. So the best way to reach out to our program here in Tarrant County is by calling the main number, which is 817-258-8102. And we answer that line Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, regular business hours. And from there, because all the ombudsmen are assigned to different facilities, we will refer your phone call to the assigned ombudsman. That way the person can speak with the ombudsman that they're looking for, that's assigned to their facility. The way to get more information about volunteering is to contact me. I am the volunteer coordinator. So anyone can email me or call me. My email address and my phone number are Yuri, Y-U-R-I, Martinez, M-A-R-T-I-N-E-Z, at, this is long, UnitedWayTarrant.org. And then my direct phone number is 817-258-8104. Either way, I'll get in touch with the person and tell you all about the process for becoming a volunteer. I'm always happy to do that.
Yes, yes. And you're always great educating, and you're always so patient. Every time I've called, I just love it. Thank you again for your time and your advocacy.
Absolutely. And thank you, Deidre, for also making a difference in our community. This is teamwork, and we have to help each other on this journey.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in to Health Chats Among Friends, where we bring you reputable resources from our local communities. Tune in next week for another amazing guest and another amazing resource. Thank you, Yuri Martinez, for your work and what you do.
Thank you.